We're going to talk about the good, we're going to talk about the bad, and we are going to talk about the ugly of this recent release from Japan, the SPB187. And I'm going to give you guys an owner's perspective here and a fan perspective because I can't not love this brand despite the ugly, stupid warts that are associated with many of their models. So I come at this kind of from a hopeless fan perspective, but at the same time, I'm going to talk about the negative elements. I don't want this to turn into a bash Seiko session because that seems to be the popular thing to do. But I will say that Seiko is bringing this on themselves. They could be doing better stuff and they probably should be doing better stuff for the increased prices that they've been charging for their products, but maybe that's another video. Let's talk about the details here. We have a sapphire crystal with a chamfered edge. I really like that visual light play that happens at oblique angles. Some could argue that that is a natural trap for dust and lint and particulates, but I really haven't noticed that over the past couple weeks of wearing this watch. We have inner anti-reflective treatment, which I like to see. We have a metallic coated bezel insert material. It looks like ceramic, but it's not ceramic. It does not have the scratch resistance of zirconium dioxide, unfortunately. But we do have DiaShield treatment on the case, on the clasp, and on the bracelet. And I think that does a very good job of deflecting minor nicks and hairline wear marks and scratches that come from everyday use. And I will say, the size of this, the fit, the comfort on wrist, the design is top notch. The design comes from the 6159 that debuted in 1968. That was a high beat, very substantial diver design from Seiko. And you guys can see the design evolution over the decades. But I think most of you will zero in on the Marinemaster 300 as the primary inspiration in design language, and I'm with you with that. I see a ton of similarities, and I love the Marinemaster 300. I've owned 4 of them to date at various times over my Seiko collecting journey, and I will probably return to the Marinemaster 300 at some point, even though technically nowadays they're not even Marinemasters. They're designated as an SLA product. They've been greatly raised in overall price, but stylistically looking at the two, the Marinemaster 200 or this SPB 187 does a great job of capturing that, that design essence, but in a more palatable size, a thinner profile, and a lower price segment. So even though this still is a $1,000 plus watch when it comes to what you're going to be spending at the end of the day, it is more palatable than a Marinemaster 300, even though it is an inferior watch. And one could argue, and I almost take this stance myself, just continue to save until you have that, $200 to $2,500 and get a Marinemaster 300 and eliminate some of the warts that are present when it comes to Seiko Pro Specs purchases. So back to the specs here, we have a 6R35 movement, 24 joules, 21,600 beats per hour, a Sprawn 510 mainspring, DiaShock shock protection, a 70-hour power reserve. So not quite 3 days, but very close. And I think that's very respectable for this price. And again, I like the size. I love the fit, the comfort, the design, the smaller, thinner proportions. It blends on wrist really well. I like the fact that the underside of the case is sculpted here, so I get great articulation, great range when it comes to my wrist motion. So I think if you were to purchase one of this, you would really agree with me. It melds on wrist. It fits very well, and it kind of disappears despite its 186 gram overall weight on the bracelet. Now let's talk about some negative elements, the bad and the ugly. I think the watch suffers a little bit in the detail department, and you guys will see that on these macro images and videos that I've taken of the dial. I really like the handset. I love the fact that now you don't have just such an ugly handset that really plagued, at least in my opinion, it plagued the Marinemaster 200. It plagued the last tuna, the SPBN03 series tuna. So gone is the ugly pointer hand, coated hand, and now we have a very beautiful high polish on one side, satin brushing on the other side with a clean line of delineation, going between the two. Nice beveled handset. I like that. I like the pop of red. I like the sunray pale blue dial here. But you guys will see these are not real applied markers. These are faux applied markers where you have machine printed Lumibrite done in a white tone and natural light. But they're printed here on these metal appliques, and it just doesn't look that good under the macro lens. And it was only a few years ago that we got the Marinemaster 200, the SPDC06 series that had real applied markers, and they looked excellent. And the lume was fantastic. I'm sorry to say on this one, the lume is great for like 15 minutes, and then you know what? It gets disappointing. And I never thought that I would say that on a $1,000 Pro Specs Seiko watch. They used to be the kings when it came to low light luminescence. And what pains me to say as a Seikopath, they're no longer the kings, at least with the execution here on the 187. It's not that great. And I think it really can be attributed to the rather cheap printing on these metallic discs. And that's kind of disappointing to see. Now let's zoom out and talk about the bezel and the alignment. That is the sticking point for a lot of you that are considering, parting with money for a Seiko diver. How is the alignment? It's not that great. It's close, but it's just a hair off to the right on this example. And you know what? That's something that Seiko has really always done as long as I can remember. It was always more common on the entry-level priced watches, the SKX007 and 009. It happened from time to time on the Sumo, the Marinemaster, the Shogun. But I don't know, maybe it's the fact that we have so many more models from Seiko. It just seems like it's more prevalent these days, but it's always been there and they just don't care. Seiko does not care. Some of them line up, most of them don't line up. And if it's a sticking point for you, I would say do not buy a diver from Seiko because it is luck of the draw and most of the stockpile that you're going to be drawing from is going to be slightly misaligned. So I would look at other watches, other brands, if that's going to be a big deal to you. If it's not a big deal, maybe you are like me. You fell in love with Seiko years ago. You've owned so many of the different models. You're invested. You genuinely love this company, what they do, what they bring to the table, and you can forgive the warts. You know what? It was pointed out to me recently that I have a double standard. One of my viewers said, "Hey, Bruce, if you were reviewing a micro brand and it had kind of crappy bezel action, kind of a rattly, janky bracelet, the alignment sucked, the printing on the dial when it comes to the lume wasn't that great, the lume wasn't fantastic, you would shred that micro brand. You would pick it apart. But since it's a Seiko, you say, it's passable, it's forgivable." And you know what? That individual was 100% correct because I wouldn't stand for that in a micro brand, but I do to a degree excuse it from one of my past favorite brands, Seiko. And maybe that's a topic for another video. But let's continue with the presentation here. Let's talk about overall value because, years ago, I think Seiko, they really brought a lot to the table when it came to their watches. I remember the days of the second generation Orange Monster where I spent on mine, I think I spent like $200, maybe like $208, something around that range. And I just felt like I got the most for that money. I mean, that was crazy considering what I got, what level of watch that was for what I spent. I was spending G-Shock money and getting a great diver from Seiko. Those days are long gone. I don't think they will ever really return. And I would say that Seiko no longer is a king when it comes to value. They can sure make a great watch that fits well, that there's some really great strengths to the design, to the execution, the color play and everything. Very practical watches. But you know what? They still they give you kind of lacking bracelets. I know that's a philosophy change. The bezel action, pretty ho-hum, not that much different from what you would get on like a $300 turtle from Seiko. They do some things that really leave you scratching your head and maybe frustrated, especially with the price increases. So I would say nowadays you're paying for what you get. You're not getting a value proposition. In fact, I almost agree with those that would argue, you know what, for $1,000, I should expect ceramic. I should expect a bezel that lines up. I should expect good lume. I should expect a better bracelet and just, detail work. So I hate to say it, guys, but I'm not all that impressed with this watch, even though I enjoy this watch. Does that make sense? Again, I don't want to come across as bashing Seiko for the fact that it's a popular thing to do. A lot of people like doing it. I don't want to do that, but I almost feel like this review has been more negative than it has been positive. So on that note, let's kind of wrap it up here and let me tell you what I plan on doing with this watch in my own collection, because this is a watch that I purchased. I didn't borrow this. I don't have to send this back to JapanOnlineStore.com or anything like that. And I have been wearing this. In fact, funny story really quick. Random Rob the other day, he texted me and said, "Hey, what are you wearing right now?" And I showed him a picture of this 187 from Seiko. And he said, "No, you just threw that on for the picture. What were you really wearing?" I said, "No, I was actually wearing this watch. And I've been wearing this watch for the past couple of days." And so I have been wearing this and I have been enjoying it despite its flaws, its warts, the things that we've talked about in this video today. I've really enjoyed this. This is a practical watch. It is a beautiful watch. It is a comfortable watch and a versatile watch, even though it is a flawed watch. So I'm going to continue to enjoy it for however long I have it. I have no keepers in my watch collection. Some of them have definite staying power. They're not going anywhere for a while. The Overseas, the Hulk, those definitely are not going anywhere in the near future. But this one, I don't know. If someone wanted to buy it from me in 2 days, I'd probably sell it. I'd probably take a loss on it. Maybe it takes me 2 months. At some point, I will move on from this piece, be it very soon or in the sometime, in the next year or so. Eventually, I will move on from this. But I would like to continue to enjoy Seiko. So I'd love to buy a 151, the Willard, a 143. Maybe I have all three at the same time and I can do a lineup between this and those other two watches. Maybe that happens. So what I'm trying to say is I've enjoyed this watch and I'm going to continue to enjoy its strengths and live with its flaws for however long I have it, but it is not a keeper. And should you buy it? I can't really answer that question, but hopefully I've given you enough information to make that choice for yourself. If you would enjoy this watch, if you would appreciate the good things, and can you live with the negative elements? Do you find enough value in this watch to purchase, or are you better off just going with another brand, maybe a micro brand or Orient or a German brand? Or maybe you, like we talked about, you save up that premium and you buy a Marinemaster 300, an SLA that would have its own warts, but for the most part is a heck of a watch at a far higher price point. So guys, hopefully you've enjoyed this rather, scatterbrained ramble review presentation of the SPB187. Please let me know if you have any questions. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch today. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.